Hello everyone, I'm making this video to talk about the Warcraft movie. I finally saw it and oh my goodness, it's a Warcraft movie. I had read a lot of reviews and they were all horrible, and so I was actually scared a bit that it really is going to be horrible as they say, and I have to admit that the reviews are wrong in my opinion. It's not a bad movie. I do have some rather light criticisms, but for the most part I really enjoyed it. It brought a smile to my face almost the entire time and I was engaged. I wanted more. When the movie ended, I was like, oh my god, when is the next one coming? Now, the first thing I'm going to say about it is that it's a movie for the fans, primarily. If you know nothing about Warcraft, about the story, about the characters, it is almost 100% certain that you will not get the same amount of enjoyment from the movie as the fans. There is not enough setup for all the characters, not enough backstory to figure everything out, but I suppose there were just one of two ways. If they had spent too much time developing each character and too much time explaining the motivations and the backstory of everything, it probably would have made fans dislike it because they already know what happens and they already know the basics of who these characters are, and it would have probably felt boring for the fans. Now, further in the video, I will talk about one of the characters who I think should have been expanded a little more, but now let's talk about what I like. I liked it all. I like how it started. It starts with that trailer of the orc and the human having a standoff. And this is like, I think it's the very first scene. I'm like, oh my god, there's like the Blizzard logo, and then this scene happens. I'm like, wow, this is one of my favorite games on the big screen, and it's awesome. What I like the most is I like the tone of the movie, and I like that they took the source material seriously and they did it justice. If you're a fan, you will not be disappointed by this movie. I mean, okay, I suppose if you're a big lore nerd, if I may use this term. Now, I'm sort of a medium-sized. I've read a lot of books and everything, but it was years ago, so I don't remember it correctly. But they did change quite a few things, but they're, I suppose, minor. Thrall doesn't die or anything like that, but I'll talk about that later again. The tone is very good. I was worried about that. I was worried that they're going to make it either too much of a brutal and serious and dark movie, or the opposite way, too light-hearted, perhaps appealing too much to young audiences, children. But I think they hit a sweet spot where, you know, a 30-year-old and a 13-year-old can go see it and they can both enjoy it. I like the orcs. I think there were a moment or two where Gul'dan seemed a little off to me, but all the other orcs looked amazing. My favorite was probably Doomhammer. It was amazing. Exactly how I would picture an orc looking. Durotan looked a little bit too human, I'd say, but since he was meant to be the most relatable and, you know, I suppose the main orc character, and it fits his personality and his intentions, so it was all good. I like how he looked. I like how Draka looks. Oh my god, the female orcs were great as well. There were several other female orcs shown for brief moments, but Draka was awesome. Essentially, the orcs were very, very well done. Again, the way they looked, a very good balance between not looking like they're wearing rubber suits and at the same time not looking like Jar Jar Binks. Very good job. Another thing I really liked was some references to the game's mechanics, I suppose. When Khadgar and Medivh are using the teleportation spells, the casting, the way, the position that they assume while casting the spell is reminiscent of the way the male human casts the teleportation spell in the game. And there was also the polymorph scene where Khadgar polymorphs that guard. He rushes to free Lothar, and as he frees him, he says something like, okay, hurry up, this only lasts about a minute. That was that was a wonderful scene. There were a couple of scenes that showcase the relationship, I suppose, between mounts and riders. There was one with the wolf and the orc, and there's another one with the griffin and Lothar, and both of these were great. You know, they showed a serious bond between the riders and the mounts, and just how in World of Warcraft you spend so much time on your mount that it makes perfect sense that you would look after one another. So anyway, I liked most of it. I like the action as well. The action is not over the top. The orcs are made to be definitely stronger than humans, but at the same time not invincible. And even though I was forced to see the movie on 3D, the action was relatively clear. You could see what's happening, who's killing who, who's fighting who. There were bigger battles, smaller battles. The battles did not drag on unnecessarily for a long time. And yeah, I think it was a well done movie. It was a movie, I would say, from the fans, for the fans. And I applaud the movie makers for choosing that path, for making a movie that people who like the game, like the lore, will enjoy seeing. And I'm sorry if you hurt my phone, but oh well. Okay, now let's talk about what I didn't like so much, what I thought could have been changed and such things. I mentioned in the beginning how if you don't know anything about this movie, it will be hard to keep up with every character's motivation and personality and all that. But for people who know the story and the characters, that won't be a problem, so I'm fine with that, except for one. I'd say Medivh needed a little bit more. While people who are not familiar with the story are missing out on almost every character, they are missing the most about Medivh. Medivh needed, in my opinion, a little more background to make the whole thing that's happening with him a little more clear to the audience. Because I, like someone who's read The Last Guardian and knows roughly what's happening, I know the insane struggle that Medivh is going through. When he says at one point to Khadgar, well, I don't remember the line. It's something like, "You can't begin to imagine what I'm struggling with. So you better leave this thing to me and go take care of the king." I instantly connected with what Medivh was saying, but at the same time, I felt like, oh my god, if people in this audience don't know what he's talking about, they're just missing out so much. There's another bit towards the end, as he's trying to open a portal to Stormwind and to keep it up. There's a tear coming down his cheek. And he talks to Khadgar, he tells him about his loneliness, and he ultimately fails to get everyone back to Stormwind. And that whole scene, while it's not exactly how it happens in the story, in the book, as far as I remember, it was very powerful for me, but the general audience needed a little bit more to grasp that. So that was the first thing. And the second one, why no Warcraft music? There was a piece of good music. I want to call it the Medivh theme. I think it played in scenes that Medivh was or were somehow associated with him. That was good, but overall I think the only bit of music that I heard that is from Warcraft was when they showed Stormwind. There was another piece of music going on at that point, and then it shows Stormwind, and for a brief moment the music sort of shifts into the whole da 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 da, and that was it. That was all there was. So there you go, that's really the two things that I sort of regret not seeing. A little bit more about Medivh and hearing some Warcraft music. Now for some other little nitpicky things, the look of the human character. Lothar and Medivh, while the actors were good, were in my opinion looking a little too young. I mean, Medivh looked like he was 30, especially if you cut his hair and beard. And same with Lothar, I mean, it seemed to me like he's too young to be the father of his son. And speaking of his son, let's talk about his sister. His sister looked nothing like him. I actually don't remember the lore surrounding his sister. Is she from the same parents? Because if that's the case, I mean, the guy who plays Lothar looks like Scandinavian, I guess. And the sister looks more like maybe Indian or Middle Eastern. He looked more like a brother to the king than a brother to his sister. But again, these are nitpicky complaints. Now let's talk about sort of the elephant of the room, no pun intended, and partially Medivh. Is Garona half orc, half Draenei in this movie? I'm kind of confused. I mean, first off, she looks nothing like a Draenei. If I have to be honest, she looks nothing like an orc either. She looks like 9 parts human, 1 part orc. You know, you remove the tusks and put some makeup on her face and she just transitions into human in no time. So you have that. However, in the beginning, I think it's the very first scene we see Garona in. Those are Draenei, right? They show them for a few seconds. They looked kind of small, but I think they were women or a woman, and they were in cages, so they were kind of hunched and they were weak and skinny, but they were Draenei, right? And she was translating what the Draenei spoke to the orcs. And that's like the first scene you see Garona in. So I'm like, okay, so I guess this is meant to establish that she's a part Draenei. But then, like I said, she looks nothing like a Draenei. Instead, mostly like a human and a little bit like an orc. What I don't get, I'm not sure what that's referencing, that one scene she has with Medivh. Well, I actually don't remember it because I was just so consumed by the scene. I don't remember the actual dialogue. I only saw the movie once. I think Medivh was lying on the bed recovering, and he sees her and start talking about how he traveled far and wide and fell in love with a woman, but had to leave her. And you can tell that he regrets something. And there is a strange attitude that he shows towards Garona. He stands up and he teleports her. And as he teleports her, during the casting of the teleportation spell, he makes it look like a flower and then gives it to her, and she takes it. And initially I was like, is that meant to be some sort of... Because, there's a story, I'm not sure how canon it is nowadays, that Medivh and Garona have a child together. So I was like, are they alluding to some sort of a romance between them? But that's like the first conversation they have, isn't it? And then the thought hit me, her looking like a human basically, could it mean that she's his daughter? And the story he tells her is about him presumably meeting her mother and leaving her. Previously in the movie she says that her mother was killed, I think, after giving birth to her, but she says nothing about her father. So could it be that in this version of the story, Medivh is Garona's father and she's actually half human? So there we go. Now, should we talk about other changes that I noticed to the story? It's been a long time since I played the games and read the books, but as far as I remember, Thrall was not made green the way they made him green in the movie. I think Thrall was born that way as a result of the overall influence of the demonic magic over the orcs. And in the movie, he's directly made green at birth. Another thing is the death of the king, which I think was Garona killing him under the influence of Gul'dan, and not the way it happened in the movie. Another thing that changes, was Dalaran floating? I think Dalaran was already floating, and it shouldn't have been floating, right? Am I mistaken? Yeah, so there was the Dalaran bit. Then there was the defeating Medivh. I believe in the book, all three of them, Garona, Lothar, and Khadgar defeat him, and here it was only Khadgar and Lothar. But for the most part, the changes to the story didn't really bother me, except for this Garona bit where she could be Medivh's daughter or something. And finally, I want to mention some other thing that puzzled me. It was that Aludai personality. Now, when I watched the movie, the first thing that came to my mind is that was Medivh's mother. And here's why. First off, there's a scene where Khadgar is in Karazhan, in Medivh's library, and he reads a book. And as he reads it, a ghost or something shows up next to him. It looked like a female ghost. It looked like it was wearing a dress or something. I could be wrong. It was more like a shadow than a ghost. And that scene immediately reminded me of something that I think happened in the books. I think it was in The Last Guardian. Oh my goodness, I probably had to read the book again. But I believe Khadgar first learned the story of Medivh's mother from a book that he read into Karazhan's library. So I thought him reading that book and seeing that ghost of a woman was somehow a reference to that, and therefore this is the ghost of Medivh's mother. And then he goes to Dalaran and he sees that Aludai thing, but by the way, Aludai is not the name of Medivh's mother, and it's a woman, isn't it? Once again, a woman that basically confirms his suspicions about Medivh. And when I came back home and I googled this Aludai, it seems like this is the first guardian and he's also a man. But wasn't it a woman in the movie? So I don't know. First off, how would the first guardian know about what's happening with Medivh? It makes perfect sense for his mother to know, because it came from her, basically, the Sargeras possession thingy. So I don't know what they did there. Did they basically merge two characters into one? Or did they just turn one character into a woman for no real reason? I was puzzled about that. So I would like to hear your opinion on that whole Medivh and Garona interaction, as well as that shadowy Aludai figure. And I think that was all. I rambled quite a bit, but I really liked the movie and I thought about it, and I just want to see the next one. I hope they keep making them. I hope they make one about Warcraft 3. Oh, there are so many good things that can be made for Warcraft 3. It'll be glorious. So go see this movie, support it, and tell me what you thought. That was it. Thank you very much for watching. And until next video, stay tuned and be good.